Okay, so we're going to be diving right into probably two enjoyable, very enjoyable throws from Robert Harting. And I want to do a comparison. So on the right, we've got this is Robert in 2009 when he won the world champs on his last throw. This is Robert in 2012 when he won the Olympics on his last throw. Um, and I want to do a brief comparison. I'll try and keep it brief of these two movements, of these two throws, and what is similar and what is different, and how did his technique change, and which throw do I prefer, and how do I use them. So if we can go back to the start position here with Robert, he's got very similar positions with his knees. He has a little bit more knee flexion in 2009, slightly more hip flexion there as well. Not much more though. I'd say his foot position, left heel is up, almost identical foot position on the 2012 versus the 2009. Left arm is very similar. Discus is deep, and so what I want to see here, I want to make comparisons at the key points for both throws. If we could go that this is the pickup point for Robert in 2009. This is the pickup point for Robert in 2012. And I think right away what I tend to see is that left knee is very similar, but again, a little bit more knee flexion there on the left in 2012. Very similar positions with the left foot, but 2009 left heel is higher coming out of the back initially than it is in 2012. And what I think that does is it actually enables his right knee and right hip to get a little bit further forward. The discus is back in both of these throws very well, right? But he gets his right hip around a little bit earlier, and we need to remember that for later in the throw in 2012. And so the next point that I want to be comparing to is where are we at 180? And if we can call this 180 right here for 2012, right here for 2009. Okay, so if we could look at 180, again, very similar positions. Left foot nearly identical. Left arm nearly identical. Right shoulder maybe a little bit more retracted in 29 versus 2012. Hips are in a pretty similar position here. If we cut that sector in half, well, that's a bad setup, but if we cut that sector in half in both of these throws, we're in a pretty similar position, right around that left elbow. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of variation, but the biggest thing I wanted to point out is the angle of the right knee on 2009 versus 2012. So that right knee in 2012 is significantly higher. And you can see that I would say it's on the high side. 2009, it's a moderate knee height. Some throwers we might have where that knee is almost kissing that left knee out of the back. Robert has it in the mid-range, whereas 2012, he's a bit higher. And I think that takes us into our next point, and that's going to be touchdown, okay? So touchdown right there, touchdown right here in 2012. And if we can look at this and sit there and say, okay, what's going on? We can immediately look at the connection between his head and his knee, okay? Head and knee connection. And there's just a slight bit more of a lean in 2012. And what I believe that's from is from that higher right knee out of the back, and he's just a little bit longer with that right foot when he touches down. He's got just a little bit more over rotation from 2012 than he does compared to 2009. And if we can go back and look at this as the touchdown position, his left foot is much lower, left foot is much higher in 2012. And that is leading to that little bit of a dump in his chest, whereas in 2009, he's holding very similar. He's holding very almost identical with the left arm and the angle of the arm itself, but the difference is in what are his hips doing. And you can see his hips are a little bit more level here, whereas they're falling back in 2012. And so now the next point is going to be right around touchdown. So if we go touchdown for 2009, right about here, and then touchdown 2012, and you can see what that high left is doing, okay? You can really see what that high left is leading to in 2012. And so, I mean, I would even argue that that is still not down in 2012, that left is still not down. But let's see, look at that across. Look at how well he held that position. Look at the knee joint. Look at the plantar flexion in the right heel. That's money. Okay, maybe his left leg could have gotten a little bit deeper, but when it fully grounds, it really is opening up. And I'll say this, his left hip, I love that left hip in 2012. I love that left hip in 2009. He opens his hip while he keeps his shoulders back. And that's one of the biggest keys to getting a massive stretch across the chest and across the trunk. And you can see here the difference between his torque. And if you actually watch these throws live, you can see that he does tend to over-rotate out of the back from that higher right. But he does finish down that left sector line in 2012 because of the way he grounds here and because of that high right out of the back. And I think that leads to the 2012 throw not being as technically sound as 2009, but obviously good enough to win the Olympics, right? So, good position, just that left's a little bit late getting down. I would like if this left was a hair deeper in 2009, but obviously it's really, really freaking good. One thing I want to point out too is how he's holding, in 2009, how he's holding that left heel right here, okay? And if we could go back here to right about this point, where his heel's at that similar position. That left arm is open, left arm's not entirely open yet here, his left heel, and if we watch that 2012 video, watch how his left heel rotates open even more. That's not the best, but what I want to point out that he does better in 2012 is that it almost looks as though his hip and knee, see how his right knee, watch his right knee, it almost drops even lower. See how from here to here it drops, and when that drops, it helps him sit into that left side and really, really decelerate that left side and smash with that right side for that big throw where he won it on his last throw. So here in 2009, his knees rotating well, his left arm I love. You know, this is something that I point out a lot. I think in 2012 we see a little bit more elbow flexion up top right here, whereas in 2009 that elbow is not nearly as flexed. It's like semi-flexed, and that as he finishes, his left elbow gets behind his left glute, whereas in 2012 that left elbow is staying in front of the glute. It's not completely rotating back behind for a good strong finish. Obviously these two throws are both excellent throws. I prefer 2009 as a technical model, but great throws to watch, great throws to be motivated by, and great throws to learn from.